a president assassinated. You had also some good things. You had a Civil Rights Act. You had an Affirmative Action Act. You had Title VI and Title IX coming out of those acts. As Charles Dickens said in the prologue to his Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. It was a time of wisdom, a time of foolishness, a time of lightness, and a time of darkness.
Mr. Effley Howell has an exhibit called Thankful Heritage that tells what it was like to be black.
Because whenever I was coming up in school, there was not that much African American history. I started a mobile Black History Museum within our active workshops to go to the schools, churches, community centers to teach African American history and race relations. And sometimes I'd get to go home for lunch, walk home for lunch, and then go back and finish school. And I remember that, so good. But then one day, they said that we're going to change things. We're going to change the schools, and we're going to integrate the schools.
Howell tells how he endured racial slurs from white students during his first year at Boomer Ferguson. He said he lived in a society that was still segregated, when black people could only go to Smoot Park on Mondays, and there were separate youth baseball leagues for whites and blacks. On November 4, 2008, the first African-American president was elected President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama. East of Wilkesboro on Old US 421, there used to be a small group of buildings that were once a scene of liveliness. There were stores, cafes, and taverns that served Wilkes County's largest centralized African-American community. The Sycamore Inn was a former community landmark. Leroy Harris had 3 seats where people got a shoe shine. Leroy said his business did well, bringing in crowds of 200 to 300 people a day.
I did read just recently, I have a lot of information, that the first black school for the area where I live was down Old 60 and was called Noisy Branch. And it was a one-room school. And then they moved it to up near where I live now, which is in the Damascus Church area. And that's the beginning of the schools for this area, for blacks.
In 1900, the property value of the 13 African-American schools in Wilkes County was $695, as compared to 102 white schools in the county with a value of $5,894. Whites went 14 weeks, while blacks only 12 weeks. White male teachers made $21 a month, as compared to $20 made by their black counterparts. In 1895, the leaders of Beulah Presbyterian Church, that was then located on Finley Avenue, bought a 15-acre tract of land from F.W. Trogdon and the Winston Land and Improvement Company. Its purpose was to establish the North Wilkesboro Industrial and Academical School for the Afro-Americans. On October 24, 1902, the school and its tract of land was issued to the Colored Evangelization Executive Committee of the Presbyterian Church, located at Tuscaloosa, Alabama, for $1. In 1903, the next school session was held on Fairplains Road near Pleasant Hill Church. The building burned, and another place was selected on Reynolds Road in 1919. James Transu began in 1920 trying to get support from Julius A. Rosenwald, a local businessman and humanitarian who helped black schools all over the South. However, it was in the 1930s before Woodlawn School was occupied. A school for the black children began on Noisy Branch with the first black church. It was moved to Damascus Church and known as the Academy. Lincoln Heights was built in 1924 in a community east of Wilkesboro. It was an elementary school as well as a high school for blacks, the first of its kind in northwestern North Carolina.
The purpose of Lincoln Heights back then was to provide African American children with a great education, a first-class education, which the administrators and teachers did provide.
Funding came from the Julius A. Rosenwald Foundation and from local patrons who provided 2/3 of the expenses. While building was progressing, bricks were sold by community members for 25 cents each to fund the construction and was matched by the Julius Rosenwald Foundation.
But we had the parades now. We could put on the parades, and we always had May Day.
Well, actually, it happened in May each year, and of course, we would wrap the pole with ribbons and weave in and out, and it was really an enjoyable time.
That was a big deal for us. It was a fundraiser, but it was a big deal, and we had a Sweethearts Ball every year. I was president of the New Homemakers of America, and we had a mother-daughter, father-son banquet every year. We called it a cotton ball. We had a little dance with cotton balls. So that was a special effort our parents had to get us back to school.
The school was constructed of brick veneer with 6 classrooms and an auditorium. When it first opened, it provided grades 1 through 11. In 1943, the 12th grade was added.
We didn't have room for all the classes, so we had some little outbuildings that we had to go to. And our books was hand-me-down books from some of the white students that had, and we'd get them after they used them. Some pages was tore out and a lot of markings and stuff. We had really good teachers, and we had a lot of plays and operettas and things. It was fun going to school there.
It serviced students from Allegheny, Catawba, Caldwell, and Surrey, as well as Wilkes County. Lincoln Heights' motto was opportunity through education. The first girls' basketball team was organized in November 1932. Other African American schools besides Lincoln Heights that were financially assisted by the Rosenwald initiatives between 1920 and 1922 were Green Hill, Knottville, Rhonda, Wilkesboro, and Yadkin Valley. Black communities put up cash, and local school boards agreed to operate the facilities. Today, a new Rosenwald initiative, sponsored by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, seeks to help preserve these beacons of African American education. The school got its name from a suggestion. The idea was to see the children reach the heights of Lincoln. The building was constructed of brick veneer and shaped like the capital H, originally having 6 classrooms and an auditorium. A modern high school facility was constructed next to the original building in the mid-1990s. A gymnasium and an agricultural building were also added, but are no longer standing. The high school was phased out in 1966-67 and merged with Wilkes Central and East Wilkes High Schools. The elementary school closed in 1968 due to desegregation.
Came to Wilkes County as my first teaching assignment, and this is where I met all the people that I know about and know of when I came here. Spent close to 23 years in the public schools of Wilkes County, and they afforded me many opportunities because I had an opportunity to be the first African American to integrate the public schools here in Wilkes County. I shall never forget that day because the central office came in to observe me, and I was unaware that they were coming, and I could not understand why a first-year teacher. This was my first year teaching, but at any rate, the associate superintendent, the director of the then library with human resources, curriculum coordinator, and several other people came and observed me teaching. And that next year, I was assigned to Wilkesboro Elementary School. That was the beginning of integration in Wilkes County in the public schools. That was another first for me. I am the first African American to serve as a principal of an integrated school in Wilkes County, elementary and high school. That was an honor for me.
Well, a lot of us went into teaching, but we have doctors and lawyers and secretaries. Oh, a lot of them in the military. In fact, a lot of in the earlier years, they went into the military and then came back and finished high school.
Mrs. Brack Grinton, a former Lincoln Heights student and later a teacher there, states that Wilkes County Superintendent C.C. Wright, in a talk at the school, gave the students the feeling that they were somebody and could prove it if they were willing to try. He inspired teachers and students alike. Since it closed, Lincoln Heights has been used as a vocational center. Wilkes Community College used it for a gymnasium. The oldest part was used as a daycare, then as a tutorial program to teach reading on Saturdays in 1992, and then as UCAN charter school. Finally, it became just a community center for African Americans. Bessie B. Harris was born in 1892 to Joseph C. and Mary O.B. Harris, one of 10 children. She attended Thankful School, and then the academy was to be built at Damascus. Her early education took place at a 4-month school on the old Damascus Road. She attended St. Augustine College in Raleigh and later the University of Pittsburgh and Columbia University. In July 1936, Miss Harris began Camp Joe Harris, named for her father, a camp for African American girls, and operated it in her father's honor until 1964.
Well, now, I believe you said, too, that the camp covers, what, roughly 16 acres, is it, the campsite?
The campsite, I have 16 acres of my own land that is, the camp is...
And the camp is more or less sort of back of where we're sitting now, back of your home here.
Yes.
Sort of a little bit east of here, I guess.
Yes.
The camp was open some 6 weeks in July and August. It served black girls from the ages of 10 to 18. When the camp was closed to girls in the summer and at other times, it served boys under the age of 14. The camp's programs included drama, group games, nature study, handwork, campfires, hiking, swimming, and health and hygiene instruction. Lady Sarah Lou Harris Carter was one of the first black women to break the color barrier in magazine fashion modeling.
Well, now, Lady Sarah Lou also started out as a teacher, didn't she?
She started out as a teacher. She finished Bennett College, and she started out as a teacher, and then she took up other work in New York, and for a while she was in TVs and tells two serious, but in so many things I don't know just what she has.
But she was a model for time, too.
She was a model for quite a while.
Yes.
And then she was on TV.
She married Sir John Carter, who was Guyana's ambassador to the United States. She was a descendant of free blacks who migrated to Wilkes County from Culpeper, Virginia. She attended Lincoln Heights School in Wilkesboro and then completed her formal education at Bennett College in Greensboro. Upon graduation, Carter taught at Lincoln Heights for 1 year, then left to study for her master's degree at Columbia University in New York. While there, she became a fashion model. Mr. Charles E. Doc Broadus graduated from Lincoln Heights High School. He received international recognition in the sport of boxing. After graduation, he was drafted into World War II. From 1942 to 1945, he served as an infantryman and tank commander in Europe. Following the war, he remained with the armed forces and began a career as a boxing coach. After retiring from the military in the mid-1960s, he founded the Job Corps Sports Program to get disadvantaged youth off the streets. Mr. Effley Howell received a Nancy Susan Reynolds Award for his work in race relations. He presents programs on Black heritage and related subjects through his traveling exhibit of over 1,000 items about the civil rights movement.
Where Wilkes County, as it relates to African American heritage, is today, and I look at the contemporary personalities who are in positions that 10 years ago, I don't think that we were thinking that way, such as Luther Parks, being, a successful African American who was elected as a county commissioner. Or I look at Paul Robinson Jr., who is in a managerial position with the